The sun was still clinging to the rim of the hills when Marie-Jeanne Vallée first heard the crack of twigs behind her. The stream beside the narrow footbridge ran quietly, choked with reeds, and the clatter of a pail masked the creature's approach, until it was almost too late. She turned at the final moment, and there it stood. It was no wolf. Its body was long, coiled with muscle, the color of dry bracken and rust, with a deep black streak running down its back like the edge of a burned page. Its eyes, yellow and unblinking, were locked on hers, not with hunger, but a cold and unnatural intent. A tufted tail swung low behind it, like a pendulum, twitching with anticipation. The beast crouched, and for an instant Marie-Jeanne thought it might speak. But then it lunged. But Marie-Jeanne stood her ground, gripping the shaft of a spear with white-knuckled hands. Her father had taught her well how to thrust, not swing, how to use the weight of a charging boar against itself. But this was no boar. This was not even a beast of the world she knew. As it leapt, she lunged forward, and the blade struck deep into the thing's chest. It cried out, not a howl, but a wrenching, almost human moan, and tumbled into the stream with a splash. Blood bloomed in the water like ink. Marie-Jeanne did not move. She watched as the creature clawed its way up the opposite bank and vanished into the forest, leaving crimson tracks among the moss and stone. It would be seen again, and many would die. But that day, the beast had been wounded, and her name would be whispered alongside it. La pucelle de Gévaudan, the maid of Gévaudan. Between the years of 1764 and 1767, in the fog-veiled highlands of south-central France, something terrible walked the forest of Gévaudan. It came not once, but over and over, striking with uncanny precision, dragging children from paths, attacking shepherds in open fields, even daring to strike in the heart of villages. It did not kill for hunger alone. Many of the bodies were found mutilated, throats torn open, flesh left uneaten, and worst of all, it kept returning. It was shot, stabbed, chased for days across the ridgelines, only to emerge again, as if death itself recoiled from it. Witnesses described the creature of immense size, the color of rusted iron and ash, with a long, tufted tail and a ridge of black along its spine. Some said it looked like a wolf. Others said no wolf had ever stood so tall, or leapt so far, or stared so knowingly in the eyes of men. It was compared to a lion, a hyena, a monstrous dog, or something worse, something not meant to walk this world. The so-called Beast of Gévaudan is said to have killed over 100 people, maimed dozens more, and sparked a national hysteria that reached the court of King Louis XV. It eluded soldiers, noblemen, and royal huntsmen. It confounded naturalists. It incited priests to speak of divine wrath. It blurred the boundaries between the natural and the supernatural, between predator and monster, between myth and memory. But what was it? A lone wolf of exceptional size, a trained killer released by a madman, an escaped exotic beast from a traveling menagerie? Or was it something stranger, an animal conjured up from the depths of European folklore and fear, brought to life by desperation, rumor, and the cruel genius of circumstance? Despite centuries of inquiry, no answer ever satisfied completely. The identity of the beast remains as elusive as the creature itself, a shadow stretching through time, cast by teeth and blood and legend. This is the story of Gévaudan, of the beast that haunted it, and the hunt that failed to end it. In the 1760s, Gévaudan was not a place that marked a map of France with prominence. It was remote, rugged, and poor. Its landscape a labyrinth of dense forest, steep ravines, and windswept plateaus scattered across the Margeride Mountains. This was a land shaped by silence and hardship, where wolves prowled the tree lines and superstition was woven into daily life like the thread of a worn prayer shawl. Its people were farmers, herders and woodsmen, simple folk by the standards of Versailles, but enduring and steeped in tradition. Many were devout Catholics who took omens seriously. A lightning strike might be a divine warning, a malformed calf a sign of sin. And when the killings began in 1764, the assumption among many was not that of a mere animal, but something sent by God or by the devil. In this bleak corner of 18th century France, with its crumbling chapels and shadow-laced hills, a strange convergence unfolded, and the people of Gévaudan, ordinary souls caught in extraordinary horror, became part of something enduring. In the summer of 1764, in the forest of Mersois near the town of Langogne, a young woman tending cattle spotted something moving through the underbrush. She described later its shape, its movement as like a wolf, yet not a wolf. It approached her, but the bulls in her herd charged at it, forcing the creature to retreat. It did return a moment later for a new attempt at lunge, but it was driven off once more. This was not recorded officially, not yet at least, but it set a tone for what was to come. On June 30th, 14-year-old Jeanne Boulet was found dead near the village of Les Hubacs. Her body had been savaged. A burial certificate noted no ordinary death. It named the cause as the ferocious beast. She was, by all accounts, the first officially recognized victim of the thing that would come to haunt Gévaudan. 8 days later, another girl, also 14, was killed in the hamlet of Masméjean. The attacks began to multiply, scattered across the Allier Valley in the dark reaches of Mersois forest. Bodies were found with their throats torn out, skulls crushed, limbs shredded. In many cases, the remains were only partially consumed even. And so, fear began to bloom across the countryside. By the autumn of 1764, it was clear the beast was not simply killing. It was mutilating. Reports noted that the beast's attacks focused on the head and neck, leaving victims with torn throats and mangled faces. Witnesses described it as enormous, with a russet coat and a line of dark stripes across its back. Its teeth, they said, were unnaturally large. Survivors spoke of an animal that moved with supernatural swiftness, leaping over hedges and low walls with ease, and displaying no fear of humans. Stories quickly spread that the beast could walk on its hind legs or rise unscathed after being shot, fueling a sense of supernatural dread. And in December, whispers spread that there was more than one of these creatures, perhaps a pair, perhaps a mother and her young. The frequency of attacks and the distances between them seemed to defy explanation for just one animal. Some even suggested that the beast was not a natural animal, but something else, an instrument of divine punishment. And in response, Bishop Gabriel Florent de Choiseul-Beaupré, the Bishop of Mende, issued a pastoral letter calling for 3 Sundays of prayer and penance. Drawing on biblical references to God's punishment through wild beasts, he framed the attacks as divine retribution. This narrative took deep root among the devout peasants of Gévaudan, merging their physical fear with a spiritual anxiety. But, of course, prayer did not stop the killing. On January 12, 1765, a group of children from Villaret were attacked while tending cattle. Among them was Jacques Portefeuille, and they fought the beast off with sticks and cries, all of them the kids. And though injured, they all survived. King Louis XV was moved by their bravery and awarding Portefeuille and his companions money and education at the state's expense. He also decreed that the resources of the crown would be directed towards stopping the beast, signaling an unprecedented royal commitment to a regional crisis. Troops were dispatched, hunts were organized, but the killing continued. The beast was cunning. It avoided traps. It circled around armed patrols. It struck in daylight, in open pastures, near villages, and even inside villages. In April, a girl was buried in Le Malzieu, having been partly devoured by what the priest called a man-eating beast. That same month, foreign newspapers began to mock the French crown for its failure to kill a single animal. Public embarrassment now matched the public terror. Captain Jean-Baptiste Duhamel, leading the dragoons of Clermont-Prince, was first to act. His efforts were valiant. He and his soldiers scoured the forest, organizing hunting drives and laid traps. However, the vastness of the wilderness, the paranoia towards them of local peasants, and bureaucratic confusion hampered his efforts. In one instance, Duhamel nearly shot the beast himself even, but his men's inexperience foiled the attempt. Villagers, fearful and suspicious of the soldiers' presence, were often unwilling to share what they knew or to participate fully in these efforts. Eventually, in February 1765, the king dispatched the renowned wolf hunters Jean-Charles Marc-Antoine Vaumel d'Enneval and his son Jean-François, probably with the same names behind it, but I'm not going to repeat them, bringing with them 8 trained bloodhounds. They were seasoned wolf hunters, armed with bloodhounds and confidence, but their style, stealthy, methodical, secretive, clashed with local expectations. Their arrival marked a shift from brute military force to a more specialized, patient method. But while the d'Ennevals did succeed in killing several wolves during their stay, the attacks in Gévaudan continued. Frustration mounted, and in June 1765, they were replaced by François Antoine, the king's own arquebus bearer and skilled huntsman. Antoine brought with him authority, resources, and experience. In August 1765, a dramatic encounter reinforced the community's defiance. Marie-Jeanne Vallée, the maid of Gévaudan, was no more than 20 when she became a local heroine. Marie-Jeanne was crossing a small footbridge with other village women when the beast attacked. Vallée faced it down with a spear, stabbing the creature in the chest and forcing it to flee. She was a servant girl, but she had shown the resolve to stand her ground. Her stabbing of the beast in August 1765 became one of the most celebrated acts of defiance against the creature, and transforming Marie-Jeanne into a symbol of resistance, likened by huntsman François Antoine to Joan of Arc. A month later, on September 21st, Antoine shot and killed a massive wolf near the Abbey of Chaz. It measured nearly 6 feet from snout to tail and weighed over 130 pounds. Survivors were brought forward to examine the body. Many recognized scars and wounds from previous encounters on it. And Antoine declared the beast slain. The carcass was sent to Versailles, and the king was pleased. And for a moment, the land exhaled. But the killing resumed. Two young boys were attacked near Sauguet and Lorcière, the older boy managing to fend off the beast's assault. Another dozen deaths followed in the weeks ahead. The king, embarrassed and unwilling to revisit the affair, withdrew his support completely. The newspaper fell silent, and the people of Gévaudan, abandoned, turned once more to their own. Small local hunts were organized by the noblemen, but the beast kept eluding them. Correspondence from priests and local leaders at this time expressed frustration and confusion. Was this the same beast or another animal entirely? By 1767, the sense of fear had dulled into weary endurance. The attacks had slowed but had not stopped entirely. In the spring of that year, attacks fled again near Montmouchet. Villagers turned to local leadership. The Marquis d'Apcher organized another hunt, this time not with royal arquebuses, but with local men and their own weapons. And it was during this final effort, on June 19th, that Jean Chastel brought down the beast. Later accounts would ascribe this moment a near mystical quality, claimed Chastel prayed before pulling the trigger, or that his bullets were cast from medals of the Virgin Mary. Others whispered that he knew the beast more intimately than anyone dared imagine. Whatever that means. And these elements were likely added later by oral tradition and literary embellishments. Another version, less adorned, says he simply aimed and fired. The shot struck true and the beast fell. Yes, that simple. Its body was then transported to the Château de Besque. There, a surgeon named Dr. Boulanger, which means Dr. Baker, performed a necropsy, and the results were described in writing by the royal notary Roche-Étienne Marin. The autopsy revealed an unusually large canet, its mouth wide, its teeth formidable, its limbs powerful, but its remains already decaying. The body was stuffed with straw. Eventually it was taken toward Paris to show to the king. But by the time it reached the outskirts, it stank so fiercely that it was buried before ever reaching the court. The king, it is said, never even got to see the corpse. The Marquis's servant, responsible for transporting the carcass, fell ill for weeks afterward from the stench. But most importantly about all of this, the Beast of Gévaudan was dead. This time, the killing did stop. The body of the beast lay stretched out on a stone slab in the Château de Besque, its bulk already stiff with death, stench beginning to swell in the summer heat. By then, the people of Gévaudan had waited 3 years for this moment. The beast, killed by Jean Chastel on June 19, 1767, was described as enormous for a wolf, though its proportions defied easy comparison. Its fur was matted, streaked with blood and mud. A tufted tail, longer than a wolf's, lay curled around its haunches, thick with muscle. Its eyes, glassed with death, gave no hint of what horrors they'd once witnessed or inflicted. To modern eyes, the record that follows is perhaps the most important document to survive from that dark episode. It is known as the Marin Report, as it was penned by Roche-Étienne Marin, the royal notary present during the beast's necropsy. The royal notary present during the beast's autopsy. It preserves a first-hand account of the creature's body and condition. The autopsy was conducted by Dr. Boulanger, a surgeon from nearby Sauguet, who recorded not only anatomical details but also testimonies from those who came to see the slain monster with their own eyes. The creature was, by their reckoning, again, a wolf, but extraordinary and very different by its figure and its proportions from the wolves that one sees in this country. Its jaw held 42 teeth, 6 incisors, 2 canines, and a full complement of molars, consistent with a canid, but larger than typical. Its chest was broad, its limbs unusually long, and the body bore old scars, matching those inflicted by victims who had lived to strike back. Among them, Marie-Jeanne Vallée herself, the maid of Gévaudan, who had stabbed it nearly 2 years prior with a spear. Its fur was russet brown with streaks of black along its back. Witnesses described a pale or even heart-shaped mark on its underbelly, and a tail thicker and longer than a wolf's, ending in a plume-like tuft. The overall appearance was enough to convince some that it was no native animal at all, but the corpse was already rotting, and in the heat of midsummer, the stuffing done by a local apothecary, who replaced the viscera with straw, proved inadequate. By the time the Marquise d'Apcher's servant, Gibert, reached Paris with the remains, the body had become unbearable. It was worm-ridden, swollen and fetid, and it was judged too vile to present to the king. The naturalist Buffon, who examined it, concluded it was merely a large wolf, albeit an unusual one. Soon after, it was buried, likely in the garden of the private Hôtel de la Rochefoucauld. No monument marked the grave. No specimen remains. The physical evidence, once seen as the final answer, had already begun to vanish. And yet, other animals had been killed before it. François Antoine's wolf, le loup de chasse, was larger than most, 80 centimeters high at the shoulder, nearly 6 feet from nose to tail, and 130 pounds in weight. It was displayed in Versailles, hailed as the original monster of Gévaudan, but the attacks continued afterward. But it too bore scars that some victims swore matched those on the beast, and yet it did not end the terror. Earlier still, other wolves had been shot by the Denevals and the Captain Dumahel's troops, none conclusive and none believed. Most damning of all was the beast's behavior. It was bold. It attacked in daylight. It attacked in villages when humans were in groups. It leapt fences with unnatural agility. It seemed impervious to bullets or possessed some diabolical cunning. Witnesses claimed it would retreat when it met with resistance, only to return minutes later, circling, waiting and watching. Descriptions from the period varied, but certain details recurred. A size comparable to a calf or small cow. A long, leonine tail with a tuft at the end. An elongated head, snout flattened like a greyhound's. Fur of tawny or russet tone, streaked with black. Ears pointed, not rounded. Eyes that some said shimmered with an uncanny light and intelligence. Whatever the rest of the descriptions, people were convinced that it was no mere wolf. It was no beast of the forest, nothing natural. It knew too much and it feared too little. And yet, no preserved body exists. No bones, no remains. Only sketches, journals, letters, and the fading words of the Morin report. In death, as in life, the Beast of Gévaudan refused to be known completely. In the decades and centuries that followed the final death in Gévaudan, speculations never ceased. The beast was dead and the killings had stopped, but the question remained. What was it? For many modern scholars, the answer is unromantic and cruelly simple. Wolves. In 18th century France, wolf attacks were neither rare nor unknown. Records suggest that across Europe, thousands of people were killed by wolves in the 1700s alone. Starvation, disease, deforestation, and war had driven both humans and animals to the brink and to each other. Packs grew bolder, and lone wolves, old or injured, turned to human prey as an easy alternative to hunting more difficult ones. In this view, the Beast of Gévaudan was not one creature, but many, a cluster of wolves, perhaps even unrelated, whose attacks were stitched together by rumor, fear, and the slow march of bureaucracy. Some cite a confusion of time and place. Attacks occurred miles apart within hours. Victims were often found days later, half consumed by scavengers. Survivors also gave contradictory descriptions. In time of limited communication, such chaos could easily fuel hysteria. And yet, this theory does not explain everything. The sheer scale and persistence of the attacks, for example, the creature's boldness in daylight, its preference for throats, the testimonies from trained hunters who insisted the beast was not like any wolf they had seen. Even the Morin report, which affirmed the creature to be a wolf but extraordinary, hints at something out of place, something anomalous to the local populace. Other voices suggest that the beast was not a wolf at all, but something far more foreign. Among the most enduring theories is that of a subadult male lion, escaped or released from a traveling menagerie. Lions were not entirely unknown in France. Some nobles kept them as curiosities. And the details do align: the tufted tail, the tawny coat, the unusual size, and the boldness in attack. A juvenile lion might have lacked a full mane, lending it a more canine silhouette. And the idea of a lion explains the mutilations. It explains the creature's refusal to fear humans or livestock. It even aligns with the description of bounding, muscular movement, and uncanny leaping. But no lion was ever reported missing. No records exist of such an escape. And would a lion have survived 3 harsh winters in the Marguerite Mountains? Others suggest a striped hyena, a theory popularized by the resemblance of period illustrations to the shaggy, humped predators of North Africa. A hyena's bite could indeed crush bones. The pattern of the black line of fur is also consistent with that of a hyena. But striped hyenas are largely scavengers, shy, not bold, and rarely man-eaters. Could such an animal alone wreak 3 years of terror across 90 kilometers of wilderness? And how did a hyena make the crossing of the Mediterranean without notice? And then we also have another one, the maned wolf. This creature does look like a wolf, but it has these unusual proportions to it. It could fit most of the descriptions that the Beast of Gévaudan had, but the maned wolf is only present in South America. How would a beast make the crossing of the Atlantic Ocean to then roam the forests of France? Then again, look at it. If you see that, that's kind of creepy. Still others propose a wolf-dog hybrid, a feral cross between a powerful dog breed and a wild wolf. One of the animals shot by François Antoine in 1765 bore double dew claws, a trait linked to the Beauceron breed. If such a hybrid had been trained to kill, perhaps even by a human master, it might account for the beast's uncanny behavior. Some even whisper of a trained animal released deliberately as a tool of madness or revenge. But the people of Gévaudan themselves were sure they did not see a lion or a wolf. They saw a curse. To them, the beast was not a mistake of nature, it was a punishment from God, a scourge sent by God, as the Bishop of Mantes declared, for the sins of France. This was an age of omens, relics, of relic-borne processions to sacred groves. Prayers were held, bells tolled through the mountain chapels. The beast was cast in biblical light, a herald of judgment, and some went further still. They claimed the beast could walk on 2 legs, that it wore armor, bullets would not pierce its hide, and that it was a shapeshifter, something called a loup-garou, a werewolf cloaked in living skin. Others pointed to the legend that Jean Chastel, its final slayer, had cast bullets from medals of the Virgin Mary, a poetic invention perhaps, but one that lingered as the only thing that could actually slay the beast. The tale grew as tales do. One account, uncorroborated but persistent, claims that Chastel himself raised and trained the beast, releasing it to spread terror, then claiming heroism by slaying it. In this view, he is not a savior, but a shadowed figure who both conjured and banished the horror for reasons unknown. The beast's near-supernatural invulnerability, its deliberate seeming movements, and its apparent intelligence all fueled this darker imagining. If it was not of nature, was it of man? Or was it, as some have dared whisper, not of this world at all? In 2021, historian Franz-Louis Pellissier proposed that the beast may have been an unusually large specimen of the Italian wolf, Canis lupus italicus, a subspecies known to travel great distances and exhibit aggressive behavior when desperate. It is the most modern attempt to pin the phenomenon to biology and history. But, like all theories, it fails to explain everything. And that's the whole thing about the Beast of Gévaudan. No single explanation fits all of the questions. Too many of them remain. Why did the attacks end so completely after Chastel shot? Why were some of the victims mutilated but not eaten? Why did so many witnesses insist it was unlike any wolf they had ever seen? The answers lie buried in unmarked graves, in decayed reports, in peasant songs, and in bones long since crumbled in the roots of the margerie. The Beast of Gévaudan has passed into legend, but it has never fully left. Even now, when the winds rise across the margerie, some say they hear it, rustling through the undergrowth, slipping between trees too thick for sunlight. A shape, a shadow, a memory that walks the forest. The Beast of Gévaudan is gone. The forest where it once hunted has grown quiet. The village it terrorized have slipped into the folds of history. No grave holds its bones. And yet, it remains. What terrifies us is not merely the deaths or the wounds or even the stalking presence that haunted Gévaudan for 3 long years. It is the shape-shifting nature of the thing. Not literally, but figuratively. The refusal to resolve, the way it adapts to the teller of the story. Every witness added a thread to it. Every storyteller draws new lines to it. And I have my own story. Well, not my own, but closely related. Last year, on a trip to Avignon, we passed through the hills and woods where the Beast of Gévaudan once roamed. Nerd that I am, I mentioned the legend in passing to my companions in the car. One of my friends, quiet until then, spoke up. Years ago, she said, when she was just a girl traveling through the region with her parents, she had seen something in a forest clearing. A large, dark dog standing still and watching her, its eyes glowing red. She knew instinctively it wasn't a dog. It was too out of proportion for that. But it didn't feel like a wolf either. And she has never forgotten it. To this day, she can't explain what kind of animal it was, and since she's currently a veterinary assistant, you would think that she'd know by now. So, what did she see? Now, if the Beast of Gévaudan was merely a wolf, it could have not been the same creature, not after centuries, not after death. And yet, the feeling lingers that this was more than just coincidence. The Beast of Gévaudan endures because it was never only a thing of tooth and claw. It was a presence, a hunger, a question with no answer. A legend that slips through the bars of time to gnaw at the edges of what we believe possible. Because the truth is, we do not know what it was. And in the silence that follows, we are left with something far worse than certainty. We are left with wonder. Now, what do I think the Beast of Gévaudan was? Well, my first instinct is to go to the obvious answer, that it was just wolves and that people made more of it than it actually was. Having a pack of rabid wolves running around the countryside, killing and eating people, is not out of the ordinary, especially since wolves are known predators in that region of France. However, indeed, it doesn't explain everything. For the most part, if they killed a couple of wolves, your pack will still want to eat. They would still hunt and eat. Unless you kill every single last wolf in the region, you will still have these attacks going, which wasn't the case. At a certain point, the attacks completely ceased. So there was a final animal to kill, which would then point my suspicions, my personal theory, to an exotic animal. When I read the description of the corpse of the animal at first, and I saw some of the drawings, my immediate thought was, that sounds like a hyena, one of the striped hyenas, basically. And when I looked at the image of an hyena, I'm going to try and put it on the screen right now. If you see that, it looks like a wolf, it looks like a dog. It has an unsettling presence. It can even do that giggly laugh thing. So yeah, that would definitely freak some people out if you saw that in the woods coming at you. The fact that its hind legs are a bit shorter than its front legs, I would also say that lends to the idea that it walks on its hind legs because it's like tilted backwards a bit. And yeah, I think from all the exotic animals, the striped hyena would be the one to, be the most likely to have gotten up from that region, especially because the region is, let's say, relatively close by, and a beast would be able to get there. As we said, the nobleman did have exotic menageries, and I would say that a creature like that would have made it there. Do we know it for sure? No, of course not. Like I said, there are many theories. My girlfriend even said the maned wolf looks way more creepy and way more likely to be it. Then again, like I said, it's from South America, and the Americas were different back then, so I don't think they were shipping maned wolves from South America back to France. If you found this exploration of the Beast of Gévaudan intriguing or unsettling, consider supporting the channel. Let me know in the comments below, and consider leaving a like and subscribing to Mythos Insights for more stories of the strange and the haunted. If you're intrigued by the world of weird fiction and classic horror, you can find me narrating audiobooks of tales like Conan the Barbarian and the Call of Cthulhu over on the sister channel, Miniature Mythos. Thank you for watching, and until next time, stay curious and keep your mind open to the shadows.